Hi, everyone. Miss Wedderburn sent me the agenda for tonight. I'm going to share my screen so that you can see it. If at all possible, please screenshot it so you can have it available so I can stop sharing the screen as I have to toggle back and forth between WebEx and YouTube to ensure that the stream is continuing.
I've seen that look before.
Hi, can someone respond and let me know if you can see the screen, please?
We can see the screen.
Okay, do you see the youth and education agenda?
In totality. Oh, yeah. Yes, in totality.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to try to take a screenshot or something and share it in the chat. I would love to get off of shared screen so I can continue toggling back and forth between the YouTube live stream. Where's mute? Oh God.
Hello, Sharon. Hello, Julia.
Hello, hello, hello.
Let me see.
Hey, so good evening, everyone. May I ask, since we don't have the opportunity to see one another, that we unmask ourselves? And since we're fairly civilized, as much of an opportunity as you have will be to unmute yourself because there's a lot in this agenda, although it seems really simple. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to welcome everyone to what is the October meeting of the Youth and Education Committee, and have the that other people will be joining us. And this is the part of the meeting where I introduce myself and welcome everybody to this meeting. There are a couple of names that I don't recognize. Ms. Hyatt, I have not seen you in a meeting before, I don't think. Would you briefly introduce yourself?
Yes, if you can just give me a minute, come back to me because someone's watching TV and I need to put in my headphones.
Okay. So everybody, how are we doing? How many of us are having children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews that are in hybrid learning as opposed to remote learning exclusively? Can you give me a feel for how that process was for you?
I
How you
have
experienced
I have two grandchildren who are doing remote learning.
exclusively remote?
I believe so.
Okay,
No, one of them is actually going into the school at sometimes. That is a 3K, no, pre-K child.
right.
And the other child is a third grader. He's doing exclusively remote.
And it's very interesting how people make decisions. When people ask me over the summer, what should they choose? And of course, it's everyone's personal opinion as to what will be best for their child. But one of the things that was very interesting is that if you elected for remote learning exclusively, you wouldn't be able to um, elect back into classroom learning on a quarterly basis. And as we're now seeing, we're having hotspots. One zip code that is coming up that's in Community Board 8 is 11213. So knowing that 11213 is on the watch list, we might have all of our students go to remote learning involuntarily. So that's ridiculous, and it's not even ridiculous, but there are a lot of behind the scenes decision making that or the neither reflected the community or the parent voice in the decision making. So those are some of the things that I will talk to you guys about later on in the agenda. So for those of you who are not present for the August meeting, um, actually one of the announcements that had been made is that I will be taking a leave of absence for the community board um, through the. But given that I have unique knowledge and special relationships, I will be working manner with our committee secretary, Marva Henry, and also with Nora Daniels, neither of whom are present right now. And but I know they'll be joining the meeting later. And just to talk about things. Desmond, you talked about, and there's another concern that's come up as well too, with respect to remote learning and how our schools that have requested outdoor learning, how those requests have been funneled. So, Ms. Hyatt, I see you with your headphones in. If you would unmute yourself and introduce ourselves to the collective group, I would greatly appreciate it.
Hi, good day. My I was attending the meetings here at community
Virtually any size company in any vehicle and adjust to virtually any size phone. Whatever you
Oh,
try.
awesome.
years.
I don't know if it's me or if it's you. I might be having slow resolution. I might actually have to go because this seems to be a popular time on my internet service, and I know I see the slowing down of my functionality. So may I ask you to start again? And then after you speak, I'm actually going to go dark screen to make sure that I have as much speed as necessary. Ms. Hyatt?
Okay. Um, I Yes, I am on St. John's between Troy and Albany, and I just started to join a lot of the meetings for Community Board 8. Actually, I just found out about a community board. I've been part of the community for 55 years, but for 31 of those years, I've been in the Air Force. I am still in the Air Force. I'll retire in 2 years. But I wanted to regain the block association that was here years ago. And I was told that in order to do that, I should become a part of the board of the Community 8 board. And so I have applied to become a board member or what have you. Those things are done, I think, in January, whenever, but I have attended the meetings. I started with the land use meeting last week. I attended another meeting. So it's important to be a part of the community as a whole. not just live on the block and do what I need to do for my block, but to understand how this community is working and how things are being allowed to be done.
Thank you for that. Very much true. Once you start attending community board meetings or become a member of the community board, you no longer look at the happenings in your community um, through civilian eyes. You understand what's wrong and how it needs to get resolved. So thank you so much for that. And with that, I see Ms. Atkinson has joined us, and she's a new community board member and therefore a new committee member. Ms. Atkinson, could you tell us a little bit about why you wanted to join this committee and what nudged you along to make an application for the community board?
Okay, actually what made me decide to join was there was an issue going on in Kingsborough where they didn't have any hot water, they didn't have any heat over the winter time, and no one, actually I was on the news because of it, because no one was actually talking about it, and it was going for weeks. And wasn't just like one walk, it was like it was in the whole entire housing thing. No one was giving any answers. And so I decided to call and call the community board and ask, could they call and reach out to somebody, because it's ridiculous. You have seniors and you have kids that's not being able to take showers and things like that. So I made the call. And then one of my coworkers, because I work for the city, said, why don't you apply? And he was like, you're wonderful. I was like, let's see, because I'm an advocate. So they're like, why don't you try? So I applied, and then I got the email that I was actually accepted. Also, why I'm in the youth and education is that I am a former educator. I also was a trainer for NYPD for 14 years. I'm also a PTA president for one of the local schools that's actually up the block from the community board office. I'm also their school leadership team chairman. So I'm heavily into my daughter's school. They're the new junior high school in the district. So I was recruited to be one of the first parents. My daughter will be one of the first graduating kids. So I'm very into the education. And I used to be as what do you call them? When it was an education assistant for a public school in District 17. And before I decided to change over into law enforcement. So that's why.
So Ms. Atkinson, welcome. One of the hot button issues right now going on in terms of representation citywide is the role of the SLT and the DLT. And I'll fill you guys in a lot of about this. I've been in a lot of meetings this week, and I wanted to share a couple of things. Well, share quite a few things, and give everybody some tools. Nora, I see that you've just joined us, and I told the assembled body that I had been taking, and I've had conversations with people individually, that I was in the process of taking a leave of absence and that we would work collaboratively, myself, you, and Marva, to keep the committee running. And since there's so much stuff happening, I just took it upon myself to lead this agenda because there's so many multiple sources of information. And one of the things that I also hope to do, one of my accomplishments for this meeting, was to be able to help everybody see where they can find interesting information and point out some things that directly have an effect upon us. So with am I doing on time, everybody? Am I where I'm supposed to be on the agenda? Okay, so a little bit of what's going on. Good, I'm still on time for the agenda. So a lot of things are happening in terms of the opening of schools, and there are a couple of bodies that have meetings that that you will gain a lot of information. One is the Education Council Consortium, and they met last Saturday. That group is comprised of the presidents of all 32 community education councils, plus the members of the citywide organizations, and they have a few alumni members. And one of the things that we see that is somewhat chaotic has been the school reopening process, and it's uneven in districts. Some districts seem to be having less, or getting less, and there's the absence of communication. And we're particularly concerned about children that are in temporary housing in terms of their access to be able to access for internet so they can access remote learning, as well as how devices are being distributed, as well as how their parents are being communicated with. So Julia, I know you're on the line. Can you help me so I can share some information on the screen because I went to some specific places that I wanted everybody to know that that's where they could go to for information.
And what exactly do you need my assistance with?
I don't know how to share screens, darling.
I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. I'm just waiting for the noise to pass. Okay, so if you go at the top of your screen, you'll see Cisco WebEx meeting info, hide menu bar. Underneath that is the menu panel.
Okay.
If you go to share, I did share contents and it was able to share the Microsoft Word file that I had open, but I also had like 4 others open and it shared all of them, which is not which is
What
not
you
what
had
I wanted.
intended.
I'm sorry?
No, which is not what you had intended. So share content. So I'm going to share because it's in my web
So
browser. Sorry, guys, to be an experiment
it's
to get it
where?
done.
What,
So let's see
like
if
the
it's sharing.
what are you trying to share exactly, pray tell?
I want to show where to go to on the schools.nyc.gov website. How
Okay,
they
if
can
you
find information.
go to share web browser, and then that should pull up the web page that you're looking at, and you can also copy and paste the address link into the chat. That way, everyone else will be able to copy and paste it
Okay,
into their own
perfect,
browser and open it up as well.
perfect.
Why y'all
Okay.
trying to act like I'm like technologically advanced? I'm really not. I'm really not.
Well, you probably need to have a screen each and every. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the link into the chat as you, and I apologize.
Oh, no,
I
no,
would
I'm
like to be
joking. I'm
more
joking.
savvy than I am. So the first link I'm going to put up, and I don't know if everybody has access, is actually the page from www.schools.newyorkcity.gov, and it's about the parent educational panel. And parent education panel replays what had been the Board of Education before mayoral control. And the reason is PEP meetings. But if you want to understand what's going on, you really have to drop.
Not sure if you know that your screen is not being shared. I'm not sure if you know that or not.
Thank you for that. So, I'm sorry. Let's see. Share content. All right. I'm follow up
I see.
examples. That's the only way we can do it. So in the contracts meeting, August 19th, 2020, and be able to cut stuff down. I want to.
Coming up very choppy.
Me?
Yes.
Yes, Ms.
Off?
Wedderburn, your bandwidth is really low. I don't know if you turn off your video, if you'll still be able to share your screen, but I do know that in times past, turning off the video capabilities has actually increased the sound quality of participants.
Sorry, guys. See, I had all of these things I wanted to show you. So let me turn off my screen. Yeah, that's not working for me. All right.
Mhm, mm, 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 mm.
No, I feel like we should have some.
Mm,
All right.
it's true.
I'm going to stop sharing and see if that's going to help. I tried. Technology is not working for me. Let me turn.
Miss Wedderburn, if you can email it to me, I can try to see what it is that you're sharing and see if I can't like drop it into the chat or share it um in some way.
Okay,
This is your good way
we'll
to not
do that.
go in and see it.
So,
And
so basically,
someone needs to
the
be muted. I don't know. Let me just get that person. Okay.
that might be me because this is what happened on the but I can't mute myself. So, as I said before, and having so so there are a couple of things that I want everybody to be. One, um, there have been challenges about how information has been disseminated. And I would say the leadership team from the Department of Education has been very clear as to what the instruction has been or what the process should be. And where we're seeing deficiencies comes at the local level, superintendents and school building leaders, AKA principals. Some districts are stronger than others. Ms. Atkinson, it's awesome that you're in District 16 because with that new leadership, they're pretty much on top of it. Just as you have an awesome principal, and the fact that you've taken a leadership role in the school leadership team, I'd like to be able to send out documents to everyone. But there's new guidance to the field about school leadership teams. Part of it is that there are a minimum of 10 members, and all of those members should be elected, not handpicked by the principal. In other words, you want to have people that your peer group sees as being valuable and contributing to the conversation. And that sounds boring, but school leadership team fits into the district leadership team, and they're the ones that really monitor what the comprehensive education plan is for the district. And here's how that is shown to be deficient. If we don't have a plan, as District 17 was in the process of developing their plan over the summer so that it could cover the previous school year. And now we have a new kind of year. Do we really know how things are going forward? District 16 and District 17 have a high preponderance of Title I schools. As Title I schools, they are qualified to have highly qualified instructors. Given what the memorandum of understanding was for the UFT, i.e., the UFT, the teachers union, said that in COVID, we don't have any contractual responsibilities. So the Department of Education, the mayor, made an agreement with the union as to what is or who shall be teaching and ratios in terms of the number of people that are going to be in the school. But one of the things that's very, very important in the memorandum of agreement, and they talk about teacher programs, operational grievance processes, but paraprofessionals, which is the 8th item on the list, and I'll share this document with everyone later. Paraprofessional classroom manager. The DOE will post the position of a paraprofessional classroom manager. The paraprofessional classroom manager receive a per term stipend of $1,750 to perform this week. Among those paraprofessionals that apply, priority will be given to those already accepted into the lead teacher assistant pool, but have not been selected for an LTA position. So why is this important? In Title I districts, right? These persons are not certified. In districts like 17, where there is a deficiency of qualified teachers, period, much less qualified teachers, how is this going to affect the learning environments for the children? So I know I talked a lot. Can I ask any what do people think about this? Talk to me, people.
I'm gonna say that I understand what's going on. I understand what you're saying. Um, I think my daughter's school is just a little bit lucky because they were a brand new school and they didn't have that many teachers. So they just added a bunch of teachers on, and all of them are very well qualified. So I honestly think we're a little blessed with that. And yes, I used to work at District 17 many years ago, so it's weird to hear now that they don't have that many, because at that time they were actually, when I worked, there's been years, over 15 years, but when I worked there, they had more than enough teachers. So that was just interesting to hear that now they don't have enough experience and teachers like that.
Exactly. So even with so one of the things that you're seeing is that you see the teachers union has come forth with a memorandum, the principals union has come forth with a resolution, which the resolution said they had no confidence in the mayor and they would invite state control over our schools. Anybody would tell me about what the ramifications are? And I'm going to put Desmond on the spot here. Desmond, state control?
State control is onerous because basically what it does is it takes away the ability of the parents and also the administration within the district. It basically strips the control or the tools and the curriculum out of their hands. And then they make judgments about how and when people will be tested. And then they also make decisions about the type of staffing that you'll have. And that can be very disastrous because if you have people who have developed good relationships, working relationships, and the ability to structure curricular teaching plans uh, and know their population, that's something that gets overlooked. The fact that if you're working in a community over a period of time, there's a continuum of families and children. And so people begin to have confidence in you, and you have a ready made pathway to get certain things done. It makes life easier on meeting the needs of the school body, meaning the product, which are the children. And then there's also the politics. And then they if they can remove the community involvement, then that's just what they've done. And you'll find that they'll somebody will be feeding you something and you won't have any choice in how it's going to be given to you, at what quantity, and what it's going to taste like. That's kind of an analogy, but in the long run, typically people come out losing when you have being taken over by a larger entity, meaning the
And
state.
and particularly in historically undisturbed communities, as I would deem Brownstone, Brooklyn, Central Brooklyn, it would be particularly disadvantaged. So baked into, I'm glad you mentioned the mayor, right? But baked into it, I'm going to, I had hoped that I was going to be able to share the screens with you, but there are several chancellor's regulations that speak to parent participation and some community participation. So I'm just going to mention them so that you know where we should have input as parents and as community members, right? So the regulations include A 185, which is zoning, A 190, school utilization, and that comes into play with the co-location of charters and such, right? A655, school leadership, particularly the school leadership team, SLT, and the district leadership team, um, DLTs. In District 17, there was a challenge recently. Um, the superintendent was erroneous, it had the erroneous belief that the only parent that should be at the table would be the president of the CEC. And after several levels of discussion, he sent a email out that informed that all members of the CEC were welcome to attend the DLT meetings, but that was an unnecessary fight. And I think that inhibits our ability to make progress in terms of curricular and the comprehensive educational plan, my editorial. Other things that parent engagement is not is it's required are the school-based budgets, which is school leadership team responsibility, the D120, which is ethics codes for parent and SLT, and then there's a whole modicum, I would say, of alphabet soup, the D140, 150, 160, and 170, which addresses CEC and citywide parent representation bodies. So that will be part of the follow-up. Marva and I will collaborate on that just so you guys have a reference for that. So I'm going to pivot a little bit and talk about the hot button issues that we need to look for in the next few weeks. One is what do we do about attendance? You know, what is the attendance policy in the time of COVID? And the attendance policy by the principals, and the principals must share that with the school communities in the next month. And it's complicated, but each school should have policies for the elementary, middle school, and high school. When the state looks at the district, they look at the whole district, meaning all of New York City. So it's incumbent upon us that are in our different silos, 13, 16, and 17, that we support the efforts of the CEC to be able to have this information. Also, what we don't have any clarity about is curriculum and grading policy. What are our children being graded on? What are they being taught? So that's a conversation, right? Recently, the the ECC had a meeting with Michael Mulgrew, and they continue to be engaged in that conversation. Another hot button item is testing. Reasons I was pointing you to the
Sharon,
contracts is yes, go.
who's Michael Mulgrew?
I'm sorry, Michael
The
Mulgrew
president
is
of
the
the
president of
UFT.
UFT.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Um, Testing for COVID, because you know that children are going to be tested, and there's a whole permissions policy. But the vendor that was selected to do the testing is a genetics company who intends to keep the samples. So
Mm.
there's going to be more discussion about this, because one of the questions is, why can't I as a parent, and Lisa, you're shaking your head, you see what I'm talking about? Why we have to be, vigilant in all of this? Why can't a parent have their child tested by their own doctor and be certified? So, they say, this is what we're going to do, and we have to say, this is what's not going to happen, right? And it's like, well, why do you want to keep the samples? You know, and you can see how that's been misused and abused, from Henrietta Lack to the Tuskegee experiment. It just makes, raises the hackles. So that's going to be a problem.
That's
Um,
scary. I'm sorry.
right?
So scary.
So, I hope that all of us that have little ones that are near and dear to us, and not so little ones that are near and dear to us, that we become our advocates in all of that, in that process. So, yeah.
Excuse me. I guess my only concern would be assistance for those that don't have a doctor, or those that are, that say that they are unable to get that test. That, we as parents that are coming to these meetings, we, have that ability, or, but there are quite a few that may not. And yes, I'm not agreeing that they should be keeping our stuff or any of that. I'm just saying, my only question is, has there been a consideration for those that don't have the capability of having someone? It's
So,
just a
I mean,
thought.
no, that's one of the reasons why there is a provision to have the COVID testing, so it's quick and accessible. But and it also requires that a parent or guardian be present. So that still doesn't address the parent that's unable to go to school. And those are things that need to be worked out and to be made clear. So I expect, and I know that they're working on these policies, that they'll have more clarity about the policies, next week, because this week is almost over, next week, right? Or soon thereafter. And, one of the challenges is this is a pandemic and this is an unprecedented time. However, there's so many things that come up as you go through all of this, and you want to be able to protect the children. So there are a couple of things, and I promise the next meeting we're actually going to go through a charrette about looking at the contracts, because the contracts are very telling how much we acquire things, how much it costs to acquire things, the length of contracts, the amount of money that we're paying out. Because you will see where the funds are expected to come from when you're looking at these contracts. You will also see um, favored vendors. Why are they favored? Is it a matter of quality, ease, or pricing? When you have something like you have to acquire all of these learning devices, is it the fact that a vendor is chosen because they're able to guarantee a minimum in quickly, or if they're the quality provider? So you'll see all of that information. And the money is astounding, astounding. So, for example, providing the mobile Wi-Fi devices, that's from one vendor, but it requires the collaboration of Verizon, which is the vendor that was chosen to provide the broadband access. So, looking at all of those hinky things. Breathe, right? And one of the things that came up too is looking at mayoral policy. I know you really have to look at the politics of all of it. And I know when um, Michael Bloomberg had gotten blanket approval for mayoral control. And as we went through mayoral control and we saw that communities weren't being included in the discussions about what happens around our schools, it began to get modified. And one of the things that the council did is that they extended, or not the council actually, the assembly extended mayoral control a year at a time or 2 years at a time. And in the last negotiation for mayoral control, so now we have a mayor in his second term, right, who's not trying to seek another elected office, because one way you keep the accountability is that if someone wants to continue in service, then you have the reelection button, yay or nay, right? So you don't have that control anymore. And I would make the observation that the transparency that was promised, as you can hear about all of these nits, does not exist. So I fully expect that mayoral control is going to be an issue, if not in the next convening, actually the next convening of the legislative body, which happens in January. So every 2 years you have a new legislative body based on the elections. So that's going to be a topic, and I want us to put on our list, because we said we were going to talk on long-term policy. What do we feel about mayoral control? What things would we like to see that are included, right? Charter schools operate out of the purview of the Board of Education, excuse me, the Department of Education, but their chartering, so to speak, comes from the New York State Regents. And Success Academy had a hearing today that changed the way they would do zoning, which is across boroughs. And in the chartering process, they don't have to seek community or public input, where something like that could not happen. Right. But something like that could not happen with public schools. So that's something else that we have to talk about. And I'll definitely say that, we've enjoyed a great relationship with the Brooklyn region, Kathy Cashin, who was a superintendent in District 23. And we enjoy a good relationship with the region at large. Lester Young, or one of the regions at large, Lester Young, who was a superintendent in 13. But we have to be wary of this, because much can be done in the dark. And occasionally they have SUNY charter school meetings in New York City, but most of these meetings occur in Albany, although our schools are the ones that are impacted overall. So again, in terms of, and Nora, I keep putting on this on a long-term advocacy, having more of those meetings in New York City to make it more accessible for us to be able to give our input. because it makes it onerous that you have to take time off from work and then incur the expenses to do the advocacy. All right. So, long term in terms of advocacy. Again, guys, I'm talking a lot. Please talk to me. Talk to me about what your concerns are, what your issues are, what you'd like to see us deal with.
Sharon, can you hear me?
How you doing?
All right, and you?
That would be Audrey Tate Hall, who is joining us from her cell phone. Yes.
Yes. My question is, right, I was listening to the news, and my question is this testing? They have brought in some quicker way of testing the teachers and the students for COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and my concern is that it's not accurate.
Okay.
It's not accurate at all.
Okay.
I believe Michael Melgrove, was put on point about it, and
I just made a big smile, Audrey. Yes, he was.
mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you had joined us at the point where I talked about the vendor for the COVID testing is actually a genetics company.
Which
That
one,
was
for the quickie or the 3-day thing?
the 3-day one for the students.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a genetic company that wants to keep the samples.
Oh, really?
Right. So I wanted to share, and I'm sorry, I'm technology challenged, but I wanted to share, and I'm going to provide the links in the follow-up of looking
Uh-huh.
at contracts, because we actually have to look at our contracts to understand what's going on. If you want to know how things are going to happen in any entity, you must follow the money. Look at how the money, and that determines the policy. Right? So how was this vendor chosen? Why were they chosen? Do they have a track record? Are they offering a price advantage? Is there some service level agreement that they're going to be able to provide X number of tests with this percentage of accuracy? All of that
Mm-hmm.
information should be in the award or the RFP answer, and you can find
Mm-hmm.
that in the contracts. So I would like, one of us to take on that responsibility of looking at what's coming up in the contracts meeting. It's once a month. You don't actually have to go to the meeting, but it's very easy to go to meetings now that everything is virtual. And take a look at that money, how that money's being expended, even if it's just to look at the spreadsheet. And also, one of the things that's come up, aside from the whole decision making around outdoor learning, um, was as it was described to me by a CEC president, that they basically leapfrogged over the community to make the decisions happen and made it a multi-agency response. But the end result was, for example, a school that had 705, which is located on Classen and Bergen, or excuse me, Classen and St. Mark's, made a request for outdoor learning on Tuesday, but had not gotten a response that was sufficient because they didn't have the personnel to meet with the requirements, and having as by posing those challenges in a public meeting, a tri-agency panel got together to facilitate the outdoor learning request, and we knew about it. We, the community board, found out about it on Friday when a neighborhood resident posted a sign about their inability to park, their cars on the street between 7 o'clock and 4 o'clock, and for a limited time until around Thanksgiving, November 24th. But again, how are we going to respond to the issues and the concerns of the community if we don't have any notification or say about that? And those advocates that think that, having a car in New York City should not guarantee you parking, right? Um, we have all of those conversations. So being able to find that information out about how the decision was being made, who made the decision, was a little bit onerous. But those are the kinds of things that, again, if we don't say that we want to know, we don't know.
How is it that anything, I'm new to this whole thing, I'm learning. It's going to be a definite learning curve for me. But how is it that anything that deals with our children, our people, our streets, our buildings does not have to come through the community board. How does that happen?
So the community board's role is advisory, and our
Oh,
purpose basically is to collaborate with agencies that are served with us. But we aren't asked for it, or we're unknown to many people that should know about us. But pause for 1 second, Tiffany. I see somebody whose phone number ends in 54. Who are you? I'm asking, hello? Someone who's on the line whose phone number ends in 54. Who are you?
Hmm.
Interesting, right?
Hmm.
Hold on 1 second. Because we always like to know who's in the room with us. And
absolutely.
with the possibility, I'm sorry, guys, it's my housekeeping being anal. All right, thank you. I'm trying chat this, but anyway, so yeah, so mayoral control is going to be an issue. Also, I'd love to give a shout out to the family and community engagement of the Department of Education. They have done a tremendous job in a difficult time, and they are the reason why we know what's going on. So I've spoken for what, the better part of 45 minutes about education. Is there anything else anybody thinks I should talk about? Or questions, queries, gaps? Because I'm going to give this feedback to my peer group. Okay, thanks. It's Miss Jordan that's on that line that ends in 54. I was like, who is she? And we need this for attendance records. Thank you, Jenny. Um,
Can you hear me?
can you hear me?
Oh, this is Miss Kinsey.
Hi, Regina.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Good. I wanted to discuss the mayoral control a little further because I remember when Bloomberg took control, because at that time my son was still in elementary school. I was never in favor of it, but if I could remember, like you said, back then it was blanketed and almost everyone was willing to try it. But since then, especially since de Blasio have taken the reign, I have long called for the control to come back to the parents. And since you're mentioning it, is this something now where we should be rallying around and calling our assembly people and our Senate to not allow this to move forward when it's time to go back? Because the last time he couldn't wait, de Blasio couldn't wait to get up to Albany. He was salivating at the mouth to keep control, and I couldn't understand why. If you could shed light on that, please let us know. But like you say, it's going to be a hot button item. Is this something that you don't support, or most of us don't support, and how can we make sure that this doesn't happen and try something different moving forward?
So the way it's up in the age of COVID is that school reopening was a political choice, right? Not a choice of professional educators. And the implementation thereof was left to those who are professional educators. So what
Hmm.
does that speak to? Do we want to be led in a political process in schooling, or do we want to have professional expertise?
Yeah. So I think, yeah, we have to end this. We have to make sure that our children's education comes first. It should not be about politics, and the parents have no voice. At this point, my son is grown and he graduated college, but I'm still very much concerned about our children's education and our children's well-being and sustainability in our community.
So the leadership on this comes from the Education Council Consortium, and they've been very good with that. And they collaborate with a number of other organizations. It's my expectation that they will have some sort of policy or opinion paper prior to the beginning of the next session.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, well, thank you.
Will that be brought to the community board, or is that something that we have to look out when we deal with what was it that you said that you were trying to pull up?
So I'll share the memorandum so you guys will have historical background, the UFT memorandum and the CSA memorandum. But certainly I'm in those rooms where some of those discussions are had, so I will definitely share, because as I explained to our chair, Ethel Tyus, each committee and the committee chair thusly should be the subject matter experts about those kinds of things. But if, when I say, because collaboratively, each of us occupy different spaces, that we would know about what's going on in our own neighborhood. And I'll give you an example. One of the principals came to a parent and wanted the community board to advocate on his behalf, right, regarding an after-school program. And my response, because it was a quick text, was, And it's because I knew the history of the principal, who often has skirted rules or doesn't want to hew close to what, Department of Education mandates are, requirements are. And the first thing I directed that parent to do is ask to take a look at the budget. Where did that money come from? Because the requirement was that the money for after school programs go to 501c3s. So the fact that he can't use his program of choice says that his program is not a 501c. We say, so I don't want us to be blind advocates for anything, but to have the knowledge behind that. And those are the kinds of things that you need to have the expertise, to be able to have the relationships with. So, Mark, I know one of the things that you wanted to do was to make sure that you're a part of this committee, and I know your other involvement in terms of policing, specifically your interest in the interdiction of youth and policing. Is there anything new that we need to know, or any initiatives that you think should be part of our advocacy plan for this year?
I guess right now, as we all know, we're going through a little unique situation with this COVID, and the youths are really on kind of on a semi lockdown, not able to participate in any kind of activities. But as of right now, I really don't have anything that in store. But I think this would be a good time for us to, put our mind together on this and see how we can prepare once the streets and the community and our country start opening back up. So I'll definitely be looking on things that we can definitely do in reference to the youth.
Okay, all right. And so we're getting to the part of the agenda where we need to discuss any other business. So one of the things I'd like to bring forth to the committee is that we do not have to meet. Our bylaws changed last year. The community board's bylaws changed last year, where we do not have to meet every single month, which had been the previous requirement, but we could meet when we deem necessary. And we had a meeting in August. So we didn't necessarily have to have a meeting in September. We're meeting again in October, this meeting. I would propose that we don't meet in December, but we meet in November, and then we meet in January. So I'd like to propose that we skip the December meeting and that we also skip the March meeting this year. How say you?
I second.
Okay, just as a point of clarity, your November meeting would be scheduled for Election Day.
That's even more of a reason not to meet,
In November, I
which
think
is
we
something
just
that Quasi, which is something Quasi had advocated for many years, and I was insistent that we meet, irrespective of the fact that it was on Election Day.
Okay, so you want to meet on Election Day.
No, we do not want to meet on the Election Day.
Okay, do you have an alternative date in November then? Or
No,
did I just hear you say you wanted to meet in November and not December?
Not December.
Sharon?
Yes.
I'm confused.
Okay, I was trying to say something, but my connection dropped.
Okay, go talk to me.
I was going to ask you, in the past, you had assigned or you were thinking about assigning homework or particular points of interest to have members of the committee look into. Would you want to wait until next month to do that?
We can begin the conversation now and continue it in the future. Talk to me, Desmond.
I'm I'm just well, I don't know if you've spoken to Pam, and Pam pulled me into her collective, but
Talk about what the collective is, its mission, and who Pam is.
the
It's important
collective
to know.
is basically about getting Title One funding and getting it, and what Title One is, and what all the other Title Two, Title Three, Title Four, but Title One predominantly because of our district having a lot of lower socioeconomic. The
Mhm.
way that though you can get funds, federal and state funds, and how they and the rules for having them dispersed, how you organize schools so
Mhm.
that you have different varying levels of teams and interlocking connectivity and collectiveness so that the ultimate product is the best education for everyone so that
Right.
you benefit the children who are academically superior. You make sure that the children who may be behind get caught up, that whatever resources are necessary for them are made available, and that they're always done in a way so that there's no scandal involved. The parents are involved and the parents are educated to follow through with the process.
So, in other words, you want to make sure that Title One monies are used for equity.
Equity plus.
Okay.
But going back to the point that Mark made, which is something that everybody that I've heard other parents in grocery stores discussing. When the pandemic first started, a lot of parents who were quote essential didn't have the ability, they didn't have the experience, the time, or the ability to make sure that their children were properly taking advantage of remote learning, or they didn't have the resources to properly do remote learning, or any number of a combination of things. And so there's been lost time, and everyone knows that when children have the summer off 2 months that they regress unless they're actively involved in a program to keep them sharp and to maybe even advance them. And what's happening is you're losing a year in students' lives. And if it's small children, then that's extremely critical because that's all developmental stuff. And everything here is a big crapshoot. So if there was anything that we would want to do, we would want to try to get the most effective parsing of those funds into the communities and learning how to do that.
Well, one, I think you're on it. Two, right? Because you're working as part of that collective, and I think that's absolutely like that would be your bucket, your point of interest that you would consistently bring back to the committee. Okay.
That's what I was just doing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you,
but
Desmond.
okay, but from my past experience, I know that uh, Many hands make light work.
I'm with you on that.
Okay, and so when you're talking about the future of our community and our children, I made a point a long time ago about a situation where one child that I knew of did extremely well, but that child's last tenure was the entire tenure of the CFE case.
Oh yeah.
And that if all the children leading up to and through the end of the CFE case, which still didn't solve any problems, campaign for fiscal equity, when a parent in Harlem took the state to court because New York City had been underfunded. So I'm just explaining that because I got called out for that before I ever joined the board. I brought that up and they said, "How do you know if everybody knows what that is?" Long
Thank you,
story
Desmond.
short,
And I'm
long
just
story,
gonna.
long story
I'm sorry. I'm
short,
just gonna.
long story short, the parent ultimately won the case after 13 years. The award was for $440 million. It's about up to about 4.4, $4.5 billion now. And New York City still hasn't gotten those funds.
Right.
And so
Right.
if you're talking about the children of this city being equitably educated, and other people will always make the case that dollar for dollar, that it costs more to educate kids here. It's also harder to do everything here. And that's
Sure.
because of this, and that's because of the system. And you alluded to that when you said talking about contracts and looking to see how much things cost.
Yes, Desmond, that's what I was alluding to. So thank you for that. And we know that there are advocacy groups that are specifically focused around the campaign for fiscal equity. And I just want to be very respectful of time because I have some ask of the members assembled, just in
Sorry.
terms because I am, as I said, will be going on leave. And I wanted to make sure that everyone had access to the same kinds of information that I had. So there are a couple of things I'd suggest. I'd suggest that everyone sign up to receive the mail that's put out, the emails that are sent out by CECs 13, 16, and 17. That everyone who is on social media go to ECC's page, Educational Council Consortium, and like them or friend them so that they can also receive a stream of their information. Right? To make sure that you take a regular look at the DOE's page so that they know when they're going to be panel for educational policy meetings, as well as they can review the contracts that are given. So contracts and PEP meetings are separate. And then you guys will understand why I'm always so tired.
Excuse my ignorance, but how do we sign up for the?
So you send an email to CEC 17, CEC 16, and CEC 13 separately and say, hi, I'd like to be added to your mailing list.
Okay. CEC stands for?
Community Education Council.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries. Desmond is always after me for using acronyms.
Are we able to send information out on an email with a spreadsheet identifying the names and and the websites so that we can just go from there?
Yeah, that would be amazing.
But that's labor intensive, and that's something I don't have with to do, which is why I'm telling you to email it. But
Okay.
but Mark, you reminded me of something because you had sent out a spreadsheet that asked for the contact information of the parent leaders, and I wanted to address that. I have that note to talk to you about that. And specifically, there are a couple of things that are happening. The PTA elections were postponed in the spring, which is when they happen. They have to be completed by October 31st. So by November 1st, we'll have a whole host of new leaders. So that at that time, we can update that information. And I'm sorry if it feels a little bit ad hoc, but one of the things in a virtual environment is that they had to figure out what would be the best way to do it. And one of the conclusions that they came to was to have the parent coordinator of each school actually conduct the election. So the delay comes in the fall because the parent coordinators needed to be trained as to how to conduct that process. Lisa, have you gone through that process yet for the elections?
Unfortunately, the school that my daughter attends is actually is small. She's
Mhm.
it's about 42 eighth graders, 40 seventh graders, and their numbers jumped for sixth graders. So they're double that, so they have about 80 or 90 sixth graders now. This the first. So this is we don't have a parent coordinator, and our elections is actually supposed to be October 14th. Because I've been the president since last year, and probably we have a whole bunch of new parents, so hopefully we'll have the actually group. Like, it was always the same 10 to 12 parents since my
Right.
daughter started in sixth grade, unfortunately, and we're hoping with these new parents, a lot of them are asking about elections and things, so we'll see. So October 14th is our day, but I did the trainings that they have the parents doing that who was previously in the PTA. It's very confusing. They want you to do the Zoom meetings and they want to send out codes, but if you have 1,500 students, how does it process the codes? So I have another training tomorrow. Like, they're going to do a mock election, and it was very confusing the last couple of meetings. I see a lot of issues happening with the actual elections for these schools, because it was very confusing, and parents was asking questions and parent coordinators was asking questions. It was very confusing. So I don't know how this is going to work out.
So Lisa, I
Hmm.
have a very good relationship with your district and with
Hmm.
your principal. So one, I'm going to have a conversation with Principal Carr.
Yeah,
Um,
me and Marcella are very good friends. So yeah, 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 me and her
about
are very good friends.
a couple of issues.
Hmm.
Um, and it's particularly her budgetary requirements for having the parent coordinator, because we might be able to shoehorn something in. No
Hmm.
promises, but a thought. And
Hmm.
also to have Camille, which is the person in the district office. If you guys, if you don't
I
have,
know Camille too.
okay, so if you don't have clarity after tomorrow, circle back to me and see if we can work with it, because we
It's
actually need everything to be done.
I'm actually okay. The meetings,
Okay.
I'm not that worried because hopefully we can handle it. I
Okay.
just think it's going to be very confusing because what the requirements that they want us is to do is actually put out for it to be anonymous for the actually elections. So they want to assign a code to each parent, and the parent is supposed to vote. The problem is that a lot of parents don't sign in to some of these meetings and things. So it's going to be, that's the part where I find it interesting. My school is small, so I'm not too worried about that. But for schools in a district that have twice, like three times, four times the numbers of the kids in my daughter's school, I can see there being an issue.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. So we'll just work on that.
Hmm.
It just boggles my mind, and then we'll talk about maybe December or January what the new PA the parent leaders election is going to look like, because they're changing the system.
Hmm.
Mind boggling. So
Hmm.
at this point, I'm going to ask, is there any other business?
No, did we settle the dates for the next meeting?
What I will do is I will confer with Julia and Michelle, and then I will send out the listing of meetings, because I also have to confer with Nora and Marva, because they'll be principally responsible for the facilitation of these meetings while I'm on leave, and then get back to the committee as a whole.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm sorry you have to keep asking that question. It's just me going on leave that's creating a lot of, I want to make sure that I'm not making decisions unilaterally. All right, guys, hearing no any other business, I would like to say that thank you for participating in this week's meeting. And if there's any feedback, anything that you need to communicate to me, you have both my email address and my phone number. Please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. There we go.